It's actually been amazing to see and cheer on so many incredible trailblazers across the Commonwealth and in all different ways, and especially in recent years to feel a growing coalition of people who are stepping up to run who maybe wouldn't have considered themselves in that candidate position before, and to see the electorate really moving towards representation of our entire community. I also hear from many of these leaders that when you are the first, that does come with some additional challenges or additional awareness. And I think, in many of these spaces, we've made a lot of strides, but haven't necessarily hit that tipping point yet. I know on the City Council in Boston, for example, when I was first elected in 2013, we doubled the number of women serving that election year from 1 to 2. Out of 13. And even the next election, when we went from 2 to 4, there was still this sense of you were a woman counselor. It was a thing to be different and kind of stick out in that way. And then once we got even further in terms of representation across even just gender, I think the next election it went from 4 to 6, and then later at one point to a majority. And by that point, it's been several years. I haven't heard anyone in Boston use the term woman counselor anymore because it's a given. It's part of the norm, and we, in some ways, reached a little bit of a tipping point, it felt like. Well, I shared a little bit of this election night a couple years ago, but it really hit me. I have 2 sons, and they're 7 and 9 now, but they were a little bit younger. Well, they were both born when I was serving on the city council, and then during the mayoral race, they were a number of years younger. And one of them asked me outright if boys could ever be mayor of Boston, because it was just such a part of his understanding that he sees mom, other women, girls in positions of power, making decisions, and it wasn't, it wasn't asked with any particular kind of motivation other than just understanding the facts of the world, and it was so striking to realize that his understanding of the world around him is so very different, even from what it would have been a couple years ago, and certainly when my generation was growing up. First of all, there's no monolith among any community or any part of our identity, but often when you see women who have made it to this particular level of leadership, whether it's in the public sector or in a company or a nonprofit, they often have had to balance and negotiate so much along the way, and often are, having been in the role of the first along the way, have had to face additional scrutiny or questions about what leadership would feel like or look like. I know in my world, I can identify with many of my other women who are leaders around the city and the Commonwealth that we're often wearing and juggling multiple hats, right? As caregivers, as moms, as family members, as members of our community, and as those who are making important decisions about our community. And so I think that can be both a reminder that when we expand the definition of what leadership looks like, we all benefit. Everyone, our communities can feel more connected and more directly represented with the lived experiences that are at the table or the issues that count. And it's also, for me, every single day, a connection to understanding the urgency of what we're trying to do. Right? When I talk about schools, it's not theoretical. I think about how I feel when I'm sending my boys off to be cared for and loved in a school system just as much as they should be at home. And we want to create that environment for families, for everyone who's juggling multiple hats, so that Boston really is a home for everyone, where every generation has the opportunities to thrive. Yeah, it's been a lot to juggle. I had been serving on the city council for a year when my oldest son was born. He's 9 now, and then my younger son was born when I was serving as city council president in Boston. And I think that experience, you are in, especially when it's a more public-facing role, there's a lot of assumptions or stereotypes that come out, especially I had learned that I was the first sitting councilor to have a baby while serving on the council when that first happened. And so it just raises a number of questions of how do you handle it? What are the, what is not allowed or allowed, or how do you navigate that? And it really made me realize just how much there's this unconscious set of boundaries or boxes we put on people, that we often expect people to have a perfect separation between their personal life and their professional life, right? And for some who, oftentimes you might hear that men and women are asked very different questions about their role as parents, right? Are you going to be able to handle this job? You have kids. Versus, oh, what a wonderful thing, you're an involved and active parent, and it's so great that you're able to support all the family stuff that's happening as well. And so I think for me, it's important to, where possible, call out, model, highlight the ways in which we make it really hard for working families to have to juggle everything, and it shouldn't be that way. We try to create an environment where City Hall should be the model for family-friendly policies, because the city of Boston should be the most family-friendly city in the country. And that's not just because it's needed and so many families are doing that juggle. It helps all of us. When we can tap into the talent of so many working families and parents and caregivers who are ready to contribute their talents, but face real structural barriers that we have the ability to change through policy. We didn't have paid parental leave when I first started on the council. I was proud to write that, author that ordinance and move it through and pass it. We didn't have it expanded to city workers of all different unions and collective bargaining agreements. And there's a number of ways where I think having this perspective has really pushed me and the team to think about how to take down sometimes those unnoticed barriers that can actually have a huge impact. This year, for example, is the first year that we are guaranteeing childcare for recruits in the police academy. And that hadn't been something that necessarily had been thought of in the past, but between the administration under Commissioner Cox's leadership and the team he's put together and our office, we really realized that in order to meet the goals of the department, they've set a 30 by 30 goal of 30% women serving in the force, to have the most diverse recruit classes, become the most diverse incoming classes of officers. We really have to be responsive to every family situation as well, and that's gone a long way to opening up the doors. And there are so many examples of that in all of the programs that we've been putting in place. Absolutely, and it's not, certainly my own individual perspective definitely informs how I see issues, how I think about what we're doing and why. But I think the more important connection is that I hope, what I've experienced is that sometimes families will feel comfortable coming and sharing their stories with me or with other decision makers in the city. When you see a pregnant mayor running around town, sometimes it can start a conversation that you might not often or usually have with your elected official about how hard it was for you when you had to balance growing your family, or the specific barriers that you encountered or ideas that you have. And so hopefully, again, having the very messy sometimes, but beautiful juggle happen right out in the public eye encourages everyone to say, there are some pieces of this that we can collectively do something about it. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I think there's lots of different aspects of our identities that can get pulled out in different contexts and in different spaces. And so for me, it's not just about being a woman in this role, it's being a millennial, being a mom, being an Asian American, being someone who served on the city council before and has a very kind of city-focused neighborhood lens. So that can all mix together, and it's hard to point to this particular, aspect being the most relevant one or another. But there are definitely moments where you feel the growing that we still have to do as a community to really see leadership across every different part of our representation and our identities. And sometimes what I hear from women mayors. For example, I had gone to mayor school right when I was elected, and there have been programs that help us kind of learn best practices and talk about different subjects and get up to speed on different issues. And in certain spaces, we'd been having conversations. At that time, it was quite a divided time as well, even just a couple years ago. And every one of the women mayors had someone protesting outside their house at some point, right, about one policy or another. And that wasn't a shared experience across the men who were serving, even as newly elected mayors in those roles. Now, are there different reasons for that are separate from gender? Who even knows? It's hard to kind of pin it on any one thing, but there can be this tendency whenever we see something that we're not used to seeing to kind of attribute a lot more feelings or cause to that, when in fact it's, again, about coming together as a community and recognizing the ways that representing all of us makes all of us stronger and leads to better policy making too. I probably read more than I should, just because, again, I'm used to being way down in the weeds, having served at the city level for a long time. And for me, the details really matter. My team and I talk about how it's getting the small things right that lead to getting the big things right. And so I try to really separate out what is, just criticism versus finding that bit of accountability in what someone's trying to communicate. And maybe, sure, we're in a time where there's a lot of emotion that can come with intense rhetoric and intensified division in the political conversation. But I try wherever possible to really take it in good faith that people are reaching out because they have something to share, that they want to see their city get better. They want to improve their community. And if we can come to that common understanding of what it is that they're trying to improve or help, odds are the city can do something about it. And so I try to bring that lens wherever possible. Also recognizing that there have been instances that particularly women in some of these roles face that do cross the line. And it's also important for us to call that out and make sure that there are boundaries that protect our teams, those who are serving in different leadership roles or in the public sector, because it shouldn't be an either or of doing good work, making sure we are responsive and plugged into community, and also feeling like you have to face more intensive, personalized racism or bigotry or anything like that. My biggest ask for anyone who's thinking about how to contribute to their community is just do it sooner than you think you might personally feel ready. And particularly, the research has shown that when women are contemplating a jump in leadership or a particular role, it ends up being much more of an analysis within yourself of, am I qualified? Am I ready? Did I meet this and that bar? Than men do, right? Again, grounded in data and research. And I hope that the perspective that people can take is not just, do you personally feel ready for this role, but if you have something to offer, think about what your community would miss out on. What voices wouldn't be represented if you're not there bringing the entire community with you into decision making. And the other piece is that sometimes it can feel like there's never a good time. Especially now, I get a lot of questions about how to balance everything. How do you make sure that you can, there is no perfect time to take on the roles of being a mom at the same time as taking care of your elders in your family, at the same time as working in your career. And so I think we all need to give ourselves and each other a lot of grace, that we're often coming up against systems that are not designed to make it easy for working families to contribute their fullest. And that's the responsibility that we take in trying to understand how to remove those barriers, because it shouldn't be on families to try to navigate everything and balance everything. We all are better off if we all can be part of this community, and that means we still have work to do in setting some of these policies so that everyone can really lead to their fullest.